Welcome to the party. These guys are very funny, so pay attention. Enough talk. It's showtime.
Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name's Steve, my co-host is Pete.
Hello.
This episode we have another guest co-host, a returning guest, one of the founders of Geek Syndicate. It's Barry Nugent.
Yay!
This episode, we should say, we're talking about John Wick Chapter 2, 2017. Yes, so I saw this fairly recently for a second time, and you've both watched it for the first time recently?
Yeah, I watched it for the first time 2 days ago.
Okay, very fresh.
Very fresh.
I'd already seen it earlier this year, but I watched it again today.
Okay, brilliant. People got hurt.
People did get hurt.
With a pencil.
I mean, also my overriding, I think I've written it down, never seen so many double taps in my life.
If you go through and count them, it's like between this and the first one, you'll easily get over 100. It's just unbelievable.
There was a couple of guys where I kind of thought would make it out. There was a couple of guys where he'd be holding them and he'd take out about 5 guys, and I was really hoping, fingers crossed, that he'd forget about that guy whose arm he's broken but he's holding. And it's like, no, there's a bullet in your face as well.
Boop, boop, done. Next.
I think before these two films, I remember when the last Rambo film was out and everyone was talking about the body count. But I think, compared to these, I'd say these pretty much wipe the floor with it. And it's not in a war-torn country either. It's just on the streets in broad daylight.
It's some quite nice venues as well.
Yeah.
I remember you had all the fun people taking the mick out of Rambo and Commando, and then you had Hot Shots where they had like the ridiculous body count, remember?
Yeah.
As a complete piss take. But now they've kind of gone back to it being more serious in this.
Yeah.
And it was fun. It's just insane.
I think if you're not, measuring a film by the bags of action, I can measure it by how many times my wife puts her hand over her face not to look.
Really?
Must have been about 20 times in this film. Then she'd still say rewind it to see what happened, but it was like, again, some of the kind of the brutal kills are pretty visceral, but good, really good.
You enjoyed them.
I do,
You wouldn't do this podcast otherwise.
This is true. True.
So, where do you want to start? Should we start with a bit of the story or something else?
I think I like the fact that the start was a little bit of a trick on the audience.
What do you mean?
Because I thought so anyway. Or maybe I'm just a bit slow. But like Peter Stormare is in it, who's great, chewing the scenery as he always does. It's weird. He keeps saying his nephew was killed, but he doesn't mention the fact that I'm assuming his brother or brother-in-law was also killed. He seems to focus only on his nephew.
Didn't like it.
It's like, once you're over 50, you can be killed. It's fine. But I think at the start, and one of the notes I put here was like, oh, is this like, Die Hard? Which Die Hard is it? I'm thinking of 3, where it's like, well, oh yeah, the person who was the villain's relative, and now it's... And I just thought, oh, don't do that. And I was sitting there thinking as a writer going, well, what would you do in a second film like this? Because the first film is so self-contained and not really necessarily, I don't think, with a sequel in mind necessarily. But this, at the start, I thought, oh, please don't do this. Although the opening, action-wise, is like hard-boiled or like full-on Hong Kong movie.
Yeah.
But I did think, oh, please don't go down this route where it's just going to be like a retread with the brother. And it isn't. And what I really liked was that was just him doing the last little bit of thing he needed to do. And then he moves on to try and retire. I thought that was quite a neat and clever kind of pre-credits kind of fake opening, really.
So my worry about John Wick 2 going into it first time around, and it was a big worry because I loved John Wick, in that I don't think it needed... My initial thing when they said that there's a sequel was why. Yeah. Because John Wick was so good, so self-contained, didn't need a sequel. But I don't want to get into talking too much about the film overall because we're going to go through it. But one of the, and again, like you guys, I'm a writer, and I think the way they approach this is kind of how they should approach a sequel. in the fact that rather than giving us the same again but bigger, and you could argue in parts they kind of did that, what they did was they took parts of his world and expanded it.
Yeah.
So we saw more of the world that he had escaped from and was kind of drawn back in, rather than it's just rinse and repeat. It's another bad guy. It's another, you've done this to me, I'm coming after you. Yes, there were elements of that, but the stuff that I found really interesting was the expansion. You know, the world view got a lot bigger and stuff. And I thought what was brilliant about that opening sequence was if you'd never seen the first John Wick film, you could go into this film cold because there's your recap, right? He literally tells you the plot of John Wick right there.
Yeah.
But
which
not,
I thought was brilliant.
I thought at first, I saw some of the flashbacks to his wife. I thought, okay, we get that from the first film. But actually, I thought it was really neatly done. Like you say, it did give you that recap, but it wasn't kind of overdone. I thought the fact that, you know, you assume he's gone to get his car because it's the car and the dog were the two things that he lost, and then the car gets absolutely annihilated.
Yeah.
I was not expecting
and then
that.
some. No. And you think, well, okay, was he that? But I confused. I thought he really loved his car, and then it was to get was it a photo? I think, or a note from his wife.
It was
and
a photo and a card, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I just thought that was kind of it. Just reinforced who his character is. It was nice to see John Leguizamo back.
Yeah.
And Ian McShane back later as well. So,
Yeah, a lot of returning faces. Lance Reddick as the Sharon, the guy who runs the hotel reception and all that kind of thing at the Continental. So lots of people coming back. There is so after the kind of intro there's a bit that almost feels like a repeat of the first film, where someone comes to his house and asks him to do something, and he says no.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, they can't kill his dog again. They've done that. They can't
I know. I was like, that poor
ground.
dog. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, come on. But then they did kind of go over the top. Because like the fact that he put everything back into the basement and he tried to cover it back over with the bits of rock. I'm like, dude, that's not going to work. You're going to need to kind of get some fresh cement.
Need to get some people in.
He's such a tight, he's so tight with his cement money.
Yeah. It's like, I've done it once. And come on, do it. Yeah, but then, so this guy, Santino, approaches him and asks him to do a job, but he won't. And that's where we get to learn a bit more of the law with this kind of blood counter thing, this blood debt, as it were.
It's a marker, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I quite like the fact that they tied it in to the first film with the fact that the reason why he'd gone to this guy was, his history was the fact he'd done this impossible task, which effectively gave him his get out of jail free card. But to do that, he had to go to a bloke which really he shouldn't have been dealing with in the first place, and he had to give him his marker. I thought it was a nice way to tie it in, and I really, really hope for John Wick 3. The one question I don't want answered is, what was the impossible task?
Yeah.
But the TV prequel might answer that, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
Jesus, can't we have a little bit of mystery these days? For fuck's sake.
It's better not to know. It's just better not to know. Your imagination can conjure up something far better than being told everything beat by beat. It's like, don't do that. Don't.
Yeah.
And I don't know at this stage if I'm getting to the age where I just think, when you think the police and everyone look young, because I was like, that bad guy seems awfully young. He seems awfully young to have helped him get out that many years ago. It's like, it's like he's still in school. Again, it's probably just me aging.
It's you, Pete. It is you.
It's just good. It's just good living.
I know nothing about that. And I thought it was nice to touch the friendly cop, Jimmy, the guy from Newsroom, appears as well again, which I thought was a nice touch.
And they all just ask him, "You working again? You working again?" He's like, maybe.
But I think one of the it's not criticism as such, it's an observation. I think one of the things that was so good about the first John Wick film, and again, I kind of saw it late in the day and didn't really know a lot about it when I saw it, was the fact that you didn't know who this guy was to begin with until they fucked about with him. And then the main villain gives, like us, I still think, for me, John Wick is still head and shoulders for me, just because of the fact that they rough up this perfectly ordinary bloke, kill his dog, and there's one scene where John Legard, I can't ever pronounce his name, but he rings up, the boss rings him after he smacks out the guy's kid and he punches the guy's kid. And then the big crime boss rings him up and he's like, "Why'd you punch my son?" And he goes, "Yeah, because he stole John Wick's car and killed his dog." And he's like, "Oh, right." And it is literally that, "Oh, fuck." We are so fucked.
They play on that a bit at the very start of this in some of the humour. I say we were proper laughing at the Peter Stormare bits because he is very good at that kind of over-the-top performance. But then he says, why are you shutting down the whole operation? Why is it all being shut down because of a car? And it's like, it's John Wick's car. And everyone's like, "Oh, shit, okay, I'll help you back. Let me just pass everything over."
Yeah.
I got the tape. It's like, yeah. And it does, I think, again, like jumping too far ahead or going into maybe some of the less positives, certainly in the start of the film, the mythos of him as the boogeyman and being kind of the ultimate killer and having this kind of network of people who are all willing to help him works really, really well, and that carries on well from the first film.
Yeah.
So where are we plot wise? So he's said no to the job, and then the bloke goes out and burns his house down.
Rocket launcher, Santino, and blows up his whole house, everything. Absolutely everything.
It felt a little bit over the top, I thought. I know it's an over the top world, but I still felt a little bit like, oh. But yeah. And then he wants him to kill. Oh no, because he goes and sees Ian McShane, doesn't he?
Yes.
And I guess tries to kind of. I think he knows deep down that he can't get out of this marker, but he's almost like checking the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of, and it does. I think the whole film kind of. I don't know if you both. I'm assuming you've both read 100 Bullets.
Some of it.
Yeah. Which then that starts off as like a small, self-contained, high concept thing, and then over time it becomes this kind of network of families, and this starts to veer a little bit in that direction with the kind of high table and the kind of families behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether the world building maybe deals too much, but my favourite thing, because he's sent to Rome, isn't he, to go after the guy's sister. That's what his marker.
Yeah, because the task is to kill the sister because the sister and the brother both. There's basically the dad's died and there's one seat on the high table, which is kind of like I kind of took it as like the ruling council of whatever this body is, which we don't really have a name for.
They just call it the high table, I think.
Yeah, the high
table. But I get a sense that the high table is part of whatever the big the high table is like the ruling council, but the organization itself, or whether it's just a load of organizations and it's controlled by the high table, I don't know. But effectively, the dad's died. There's one seat on the high table. There's two of them. The sister has been left it by the dad, and the brother obviously wants it and wants John to kill the sister. Yeah. So he gets the table.
It's very Shakespearean.
It is. Obviously, the power that comes with it. He's willing to kill his sister, even though it's his family, which seems.
Yeah.
And that's the stupid thing, of course, that he then uses that as the great insult to then say, "Oh well, you killed my sister, therefore now I have to kill you." And it's like, hang on, if anybody knew what you were actually like, they'd know that you were a snake, and you're just doing it for power. But even so, he called in a marker, and John can't really refuse.
Yeah, and I guess that explains one of the notes I had was why didn't he just get the girl that works for him that seems very able to kill her? But I guess that's why, because he can flip it and say it was John Wick off his own back and then kind of thing. But do you both recognise the person, the Ian McShane equivalent at the Continental Rome?
No.
Is it Franco Nero?
It is Franco Nero from one of my favourite action films when I was very young, Enter the Ninja.
Yes. Yeah. He was also was he Django as well?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
I think this has got one of my favourite scenes in when he goes into the say, "Is the sommelier in?" And he goes, "I don't think he's never not been in, sir." And it's Peter Serafinowicz.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I just love that he walks in like, "What would you like, sir? An appetizer? Oh, yes. How about this and this? And a main course? Ooh, It was very much a little bit kind of suits you. The fact that he was British and the fact that he was obviously getting off on all of these guns, and it was just a little bit, ooh, how about a bit of dessert? How about this lovely knife? You can kill 27 people with it in 2 minutes. Like, oh my God. It was,
What I loved about that, I suppose because it's fresh in my mind seeing it today, what I loved about that sequence was it almost reminded me of the Hitman games where you've got to kind of plan your attack, you've got to plan your strategy. And what I loved about that sequence is what it showed is he's not just a guy with 2 guns that runs around killing people randomly. That there's a real plan to everything that he does. And that sequence where he's kind of, it flips between him going to see the guns, and there's a great bit where he goes, I'm here for a tasting, and then they kind of take him through, and it's all done like a wine tasting thing, you know, and he's like, and for afters we have this exceptional array of cutlery, which is all knives and shit. But it's cut between that and him getting a suit, and then him actually getting sort of tactical information and stuff. And I put my hand. I had a suit fitted for my wedding, so I had a tailored suit. Which
Kevlar.
Tactical.
You never know.
Formal. Yes. And Dave and I went together because I had to take some with me. So Dave came with me, and it was a shot off Savile Row. And it was like that sequence where he's kind of measuring you and he's asking you questions and how you want it. And it was nowhere near as smooth as that, because every question that he asked me, I was just looking at Dave, and Dave was shrugging. I was like, I don't know. Pleats? I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
What's a pleat?
Yeah. And my dad was a tailor. And that sequence is just brilliant, because this is the thing that kind of sets it above other kind of action films for me, because it is so, on one level, it's this brutality in this film, but on another level, it's so gentlemanly and polite. Do you know what I mean? Just polite. And everyone knows him, and everyone's polite, and he's always polite to the people he deals with. You know, everyone's Mr. Wick.
Professional respect, isn't it?
Yes, but, that's it. That's the word. Yeah.
But what I really like as well, because in the first film, it is the booking, which I forgot, and I rewatched it and still forgotten, the booking a table for 12, and it's actually the cleanup operation. Yeah. But they play that through, so you've got accounts payable if you want to put a hit out on somebody when you ring the kind of old school exchange, which reminded me of Agent Carter, And then you've got these bits you just spoke about then. So I love the fact that they've run with that. They've taken it all the way through, that how all these things can seem like normal everyday work. And it is there's a little, I'm resting myself a little bit. There's part of me that thinks they built the world so big and with so much in it that it gets a little bit in the way. But the things that they do build are really interesting. So I kind of, flip-flopped on it a bit as I was watching it.
But it's go on.
No, you go, Steve. It's fine.
I was going to say, it's all set up that it's obviously building towards something. I think by this point, when they're doing the second one, they probably thought, we're going to get a third one, because they've put all this stuff in. We'll get to the end, but it sort of ends on a sort of cliffhanger and a setup. Yeah. And since the first film, they've said the one rule you don't break is that the hotel is neutral ground. Anybody comes in here, you can't do anything, and that's the continental. That's the rule, and they all abide by it. There again, it's part of that professional courtesy stuff that nobody breaks it. So they probably did this one knowing or planning for the third one. I think.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Like that first one, as you said, could have been a perfect standalone, and he wouldn't have ever gone back.
Yeah, and I think and that's why I kind of forgave them for doing the sequel, because there were so many questions, not about John Wick himself. I was all good with that. There were so many questions about the whole continental thing and the coins, and he would just give someone a coin and they would do shit. That I was like, that shit is so cool. And I haven't really seen that kind of done in a film, in an action film in that way. So when they said they were doing the second film, I was kind of like, if I'm going to find out more about the coins and how all that shit works, then I'm kind of on board with it. But if it's just going to be another film with him kind of just running around gunning people down, as much as it was cool first time around, I'm kind of like, well, we've been there, done that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the coolness comes from the fact that you don't know who this guy is.
Yeah.
You know. And for me, the world building, I don't think it did. I never felt that the world building went too far for me. What I quite liked about it was, like you said, Pete, it was consistent, and certain things made sense. And it's kind of like a lot of things were like old school because I guess it's harder to track.
Yeah, keep it all kind of analog.
It's all analog, you know. I mean, it looked like they were using fucking VIC-20s when they were doing shit on the computer. It looked like either VIC-20 or Commodore. It was either VIC-20 or Commodore 64. It looked like to me.
But everyone got a text as well on their phone, so that was high tech. Like everybody suddenly got the hit out on John. It's like, oh right. But
you notice in the exchange when you watch it again, all the secretaries had tattoos down one arm.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just those little attentions to detail.
It's almost like, I think by the end, he's like, there's systems within systems within systems, which actually is really clever. And like you say, it feels like the kind of thing you only really get in like a series of novels.
Yeah, someone, I guarantee you, someone somewhere has a sort of John Wick world Bible where they've sat down and they've written out the rules to that world. They've not just, and a lot of movies where they've tried to do something like that, they've just thrown shit at it.
Yeah. You
know, like on a slight tangent, and I might get some hate mail for this, but like, I ain't being funny, but this might seem like a shocker, but a lot of the stuff with the Jedis was kind of made up. George Lucas didn't sit there at the beginning and go, Jedis were always going to be dressed in robes and shit like that. You know, it was simply the fact that Luke Skywalker and Ben Kenobi were on a desert planet.
Yeah.
And that's what they were wearing. And then he probably just thought, you know what, that looks quite cool. I might just leave that with the Jedis. And that's fine. You know what I mean?
Do I get a discount if we get loads of these made?
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Yeah.
You know, he's a good producer.
Yeah. And that's cool. I don't have a problem with that. But I genuinely think with John Wick, like there's a lot of planning that's gone into that world.
Yeah, I think the first film, it was kind of hinted at, and I think they only taken it to a point. But I would imagine the first thing they did sitting down to look at this was actually, like you say, almost with a load of whiteboards of kind of building everything out. Because although in many ways this is a setup for a third film, I found that frustrating, but I still want to see the third film. And I still want to see what else there is that hasn't been covered. Yeah. I'm sorry, I distracted myself by a brilliant typo that I've just noticed because I was drinking wine while watching this and making notes on my phone. And according to this, the sister milking herself was interesting. I think it should say killing herself.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a bit of a typo.
I like the fact that on the way in, he's gone through all the tunnels and you see him placing all the guns in separate points.
Yeah.
Like he's planning, he knows that getting in might be easy, but getting out is going to be really tough, which is why he went and saw the sommelier and got all of the guns. And he just walks in because it's a massive party. There's people everywhere.
But
go on.
The locations there and later the museum are almost like Roger Moore Bond or really pulpy, which I think really helps because you've got the massive contrast from where he was at the start of the first film in kind of, suburban America.
The mirrors reminded me of a different film later on. You know, that scene where they're fighting with the mirrors.
Enter the Dragon?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think it represents, like you say, a shift in tone in the fact that the first film was small scale in some ways, and I think because of the fact that he was almost on the outskirts of the world that he'd left, and he'd kind of been pulled back into the fringes of it because he had to deal with some shit. And the second film was kind of him being fully pulled back in, and then suddenly like, wow, this is a massive world that he deals in.
And I think it's one of those rare occasions where the sequel makes the first film even stronger, because when you think of it, then you think, well, hang on, no wonder they were shitting themselves. This guy can deal with all this international assassins from everywhere, and this guy's idiot son, who hasn't got a clue what he's doing, has pissed him off. And it actually makes it's very rare that a second film will make a first film's premise actually even better.
Yeah. And when you see him go up against not just the main two in the film, Common and Ruby Rose, but when the others all come after him, you still see how good he is. And it's like, he messes up some people all through the film, but when the other assassins come after him, you realise that's why he's the best. He's just so good compared to some of them.
But also, what you realise, which again, I think you get it more in the second film. Certainly with Common's character as well, is the fact that yes, he's the best of the best, and he's like John Wick, and fuck with him, but. It's almost like if you think of like the double O's in your Bond films, and it's almost like Ruby Rose and Common are like his level.
Yes.
I mean, and the whole fact of like Common was coming after him because he killed the sister, but there's a bit where he kind of, and she's his ward and he's supposed to protect her and blah, blah, blah. And you almost get a sense that almost like, that's almost like their role, and almost like John's role was protecting the Russian dude in the first film. If you get what I mean, like once upon a time that was him. He was John's ward and he was protecting him, and then obviously he left. And I think that side of it I really liked.
I know. So that ties into they're almost like knights, and it's like chivalry, which is why it's so professional and courteous. It's almost like, the fight between those two is almost like a duel. A continuous duel, really. And it's a really good point, because in my notes I thought, I don't know why Cassian, I think is Common's character, why he isn't more scared of him, because of the whole boogeyman thing. But I guess once you are, like you say, in the top 1% of assassins, you are in the top 1% of assassins. So, and maybe people wouldn't have seen Cassian doing as much, because I think the Russians tried to build up the boogeyman myth because it worked for them with the kind of gangland territory they wanted. So thinking about that, because at the time I was like, well, actually everyone's petrified of John Wick except this one guy, but at least it gives you, because I think you do realise that he's not invincible, and there are people that can more or less take him on.
Well, I think what that was, the way I looked at it, certainly second time around, is so Cassius is protecting someone who's effectively a member of the High Table, which is like they're like the top team. They're the ruling council. So obviously, for him to be up there protecting one of them, he's got to be one of the top boys in terms of assassins. Yeah. So he's got to be on John's level. That's how I looked at it. And the fact that they kind of knew each other. And the minute there's a bit where John's walking out after she's kind of killed herself, and he kind of clocks him, and they look at each other, and you can almost see John sort of going, "Oh, fuck." Do you know what I mean? Like, of all the people, I was really hoping to get out of here without seeing him. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And he's like, "John, you work?" And what I love is the fact that he goes, "You working again?" And he's like, there's no lies. He's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "How'd it go for you?" And he's like, "Sadly, it went pretty well." And you just know. And he just look at him as like, "You've killed her," and he's almost like, "I've killed her." And then they're both. And there's a couple of moments where they both pull their guns and shoot at each other, and I was kind of thinking, the whole film, John's always about double tapping. It's always about chest shot, headshot, and I'm kind of like, but why is it when you two faced off, there was no headshot? And the only conclusion I can come to sort of write it myself was neither of them had the time to do that. And it was almost like, if I go for the headshot and I miss, I'm dead. So I've just got to put him down enough to get out of dodge. And I think both of them were thinking that way. And that's what I liked about their push-pull.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I also think, I'm not sure John wanted to kill him, because later he does kind of let him off the hook.
Yeah.
When he could have killed him. And I don't know whether there's an element of that he's doing this because he has to, but he won't kill.
But then why didn't the other guy? The other guys, I saw the other guy as good as John.
Yeah.
As John. So why didn't he go for it? And I think it was because they were both as good as each other.
Yeah.
And they just didn't have the time for it. So that was that's how I clocked it.
That's a good point. I think I didn't realise the parallels between them as much, but I think you're right, because when he says, "Are you working?" he goes, "Yeah, are you?" And it is like, yeah, we both are actually, so this is on, whatever happens.
Yeah.
And Cassian says to him, I'll make it quick. And he goes, "Oh, that's good of you, so will I." And it's just like, it's beautifully done. They're almost like two tigers kind of.
Well, they have that fight, because that scene comes, isn't it? Because they have this massive fight scene.
Yeah.
Well, John has this massive fight scene to get out, which is
it's unbelievable.
Oh.
Just,
All his
goes
prep
gun
makes
to gun
sense
to gun.
now.
Sorry, Steve?
All of his preparation makes sense, looking at the tunnels, getting the guns, placing them, different types of gun. It all just pays off so well now.
And I think that's what's good. That's what elevates it from your random one guy against the world action movie, in the fact that there's forethought and there's planning and there's skill and there's precision. No bullet is wasted, and it's the fact that he takes out, I don't know, like 40 guys or whatever, gets out, and then he gets knocked over, and you were thinking, fuck, what the hell? And it's the Cassius guy.
Yeah.
And then they come out and they have this brutal fight, and they're level pegging. They're level pegging in this fight. And then they fall into the place, and they're still fighting, and the bloke comes out and he's like, gentlemen. You know what I mean? Look at where you are, There'll be no blood spilt in here. And they're like, oh. And he just goes, why don't you calm yourself in the bar? And they just go. And there was a cartoon way back in the day. It was a Tex Avery cartoon, and it was a hound, and it was a sheep. It was a sheepdog, and fox.
I know the one you mean.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
And they would spend like most of the cartoon, kind of like it was almost like the coyote and the roadrunner, and the fox would be trying to get in, and the sheepdog would be stopping him, and all hilarity ensues. But at the end of every cartoon, they would clock out.
Right.
They would literally have two punch cards and clock out. Hey, see you tomorrow, George. Yeah, see you tomorrow, friend. That was a good one. Yeah, it was good. And they would have these pauses where they'd have a little bit of a chat, and they were obviously mates, but they had a job to do. And that's what that sequence was. When they're in the bar just sitting and chatting, it's kind of like explains it to me as, oh yeah, Mark is a tough one. It's like, I understand why you had to do it, but I've got to kill you. It's not personal. I'll make it quick. And that's what he's like, I'll make it quick and professional courtesy. And this is one, awesome scene.
And they do a good job of upping the stakes, which is very hard to do when you've built up a character in the first film to be almost unkillable. Mm-hmm. And then you have to go, well, okay, well, it's all the people that are surrounding this family, actually, and they've got this amazing assassin. Oh, and actually, they're going to take out a marker so anyone can come after him. And I think that I love that. As soon as the open contract happened, I mean, again, it reminded me of old kind of like Spider-Man comics where it's like, there's J. Jonah Jameson says anybody, there's $1 million, whatever, for anybody who brings him in. And I think that kind of stuff has been done before, but I think it's done really cleverly here.
Yeah.
Because he's now, and and I love the fact that, like, basically they're everywhere. These people are not hidden, really. They're literally, it's like the phone's go off and it's 5 people like surrounding you, and it makes if I was on, I was in London on the tube that day, I'd have been pretty paranoid, because it's literally, it's like, you're an assassin. Yep, there's more assassins than there are non-assassins in this world.
It's like the busker, wasn't she one?
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, the
Like
violinist.
the big sumo guy, isn't it? And it's like, he was unstoppable, it seemed to be, until John Still took him down, and that was a brutal fight. Oh, that was nasty.
Yeah. And then I think, again, he takes out about 5 of these guys, or these different assassins, and then Common rocks up again, and that sequence is just... There's one scene where I think... I've seen silencers in films many times. Yeah. But never done so cool like that, with the exception of Bond, Jester Smith and Wesson, you've had your 6. Where they're just walking and like they're both kind of holding these guns, trying to not expose them, but they're sort of taking pot shots at each other. One's down sort of on the ground, and everyone's kind of high up walking, and like... And they're walking. It's just fucking awesome. It's just, and that's the bit where you realise that these guys are level pegging. It is not Common is not outclassed.
No,
he is not outclassed at all. And it's kind of like when they have the fight in the tube, and you know John wins. It's because he was the better guy on the night.
Yeah.
But you get a sense that had it been a different night, it could have been the other way around.
It's a valid point. I think that where they place that scene in the film is really cleverly done as well, because you've got the whole pencil line from the first film, and then it gets repeated in the second film for comedy value, and then he does do it here. So you've just seen him take out like 10, 15 assassins. He's just seen him kill someone with a pencil, or maybe even 2 people with a pencil. So you've reminded that he is that good. So when they go toe to toe, you know that it is kind of like the heavyweight championship of the world of assassins.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if he'll come back for the third one, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'd like to see him come back. I would.
I put a note here. He leaves him alive. Has he learned nothing from Saving Private Ryan?
I'd like to, and I think this is the thing about questions, and you don't want the answers to them. It sounds a bit of a weird way to say it. What I'm going to say, I'd really like to know what the history is, but I don't want to know what the history is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Because he's taken out everyone else without breaking a sweat. As in, when I say without breaking a sweat, as in no emotional connection. He's just like, bang, 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 I take you, I'm not even fussed about you. Whereas him, he's left alive.
Yeah. And he killed the sister, although she killed herself. He was willing to do it, and he did put a bullet in her.
He did finish it off, though, didn't he? Put 2 bullets in her head just so that it was clear.
Yeah. And they clearly had a relationship, not necessarily a romantic one, but there was a connection between the 2 of them.
Yeah.
So, I thought, second viewing, I thought Common's character, I thought was brilliant.
We can talk about the reunion from this film of the 2 actors.
Indeed.
Oh,
Matrix.
Oh, that was a bit of a negative noise from Barry.
Bit of sun casting.
You guys can go first. I will talk afterwards.
Well, this is the bit I think where it went very John Woo for about 10 minutes, because there were homeless people and there were doves.
It's true. Yeah.
So hard target. I'm guessing I'm going to agree with Barry, because I thought it was a little bit of a naff move, and I thought it was stunt casting because they were in, because the role is kind of, it makes their characters almost ciphers for their characters in The Matrix, which I didn't want to think about another film when I was watching this one. Having said that, Laurence Fishburne is a great actor, so it's not as if he didn't do a good job in the role. But I just thought it felt like something. Oh, do you know what we could do? Oh, let's do that. But why? You didn't need to do that. But that's me.
So his character's called, Laurence Fishburne's character's called the Bowery King.
Yep.
Is he a member of the High Table?
I get the feeling he might have previously been a member.
Because we know that he's a guy with connections and that he runs a bunch of other people. So he's, got his own network of followers who've got guns and blah, 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 and weapons and things. But, so he's a player, but we don't really know where he sort of fits in. Just that... I
don't think he is a member of the High Table.
Right. I think he used to be, because I think at one point John Wick sort of says, he says to John Wick, it's not easy to get out, is it? And he's almost like, well, you would know. I may have imagined that, but it felt like they were talking as if they were the only 2 people who'd left the system.
Maybe.
No, I saw him as the... So, in the first film, and again, it's a brilliant... These 2 films are so good in terms of the understated stuff. There's a bit in the first film where you got this big Arnie-looking motherfucker. He's standing there, and John just comes out of nowhere. And I think I don't know if he puts a gun to his head or something like that. And he's like, and he speaks to him in German or his own language. And it's kind of like, are you working tonight, John? He's like, oh, Mr. Wick. He's like, yeah. He said, you working today? Yeah, I am. He said, why don't you take the night off?
It's Kevin Nash, isn't it, Pete?
It is Kevin Nash, yeah.
He's a big, he's an old WWE wrestler who's like 6'6".
Yeah.
And he sort of says, Lawrence, it's called like Lawrence or something, isn't it? Because he goes, oh, you working? I think you should have the night off, Lawrence. Oh, thanks, Mr. Wick.
Oh, no, because he comes up to me and goes, haven't you lost weight or something? He's like, yeah. It's like, why don't you take the night? And he just knows every fucker. It's like, why don't you take the night? He's like, yeah, I will do. And basically, with Laurence Fishburne, I saw Laurence Fishburne as that guy because they explain, because what Laurence Fishburne says is like, you made me, because he shows him a scar and says that basically John had cut him.
Yes.
It come out of nowhere, cut him, and then gave him a choice. He could either like try and shoot him in the back, but to do that, he would have to take his hand off the throat and then he would bleed out. So he gave him a choice, and he obviously chose to like not do it. Build his little empire.
And what he'd done to Cassian was quite similar. He kind of just left him there. You just need to get help. Yeah, that's a valid point.
But you were keen on seeing him back then, Barry.
Right. So I wouldn't say I hated it. Is a bit too strong actually. But I didn't have a problem with Laurence Fishburne being cast in it. I didn't necessarily see it as stunt casting. That didn't bother me. What bothered me was his character. It just, I know for a film where he's gone to Rome and he's had to assassinate some, effectively, it's almost like he's working for Spectre. This whole organisation is almost how I see Spectre should be run. Yeah. Efficiently, politely. That's how it should be run. So it's an over the top film, and yet those 10, 15 minutes with Laurence Fishburne were so over the top that it nearly took me out of the entire film.
Right.
Someone get this man a gun. It's just like, dude, just take it down a notch. Sure. You know what I mean? It just didn't. I think because everyone else is so reserved.
Mm. But maybe the more you say it, though, maybe that is part of the deliberate contrast. And whatever's going to happen in the third film is you've got this high society, dignified, kind of 1% almost assassin world, and he's there on the streets with the homeless. So maybe they're trying to really emphasize that huge difference between the
they could have done that without making him
overact.
Yeah, you know what I mean? They could have, true. Because how that scene kicked off, which is I was going to say is possibly one of my favorite scenes in the whole film, because my mouth just dropped open, and it's the bit where he's just had the fight with Cassius, and then there's more guys coming from him. He's running, and there's this homeless bum, and I was just thinking, it's just a homeless bum. And when he just puts the coin in his cup and says, get me to him, and tell him it's John Wick, I was like, what the fuck? And then when he sort of covers himself over, I still thought, okay, the guy will probably just help him and put him in a shopping cart, take him somewhere. But when the two guys come up to him and he's like, hey guys, and he just pulls a gun out, and I was like, literally, after I saw that film, I didn't want to leave my house. So I was like, these fuckers are everywhere.
I know what you mean, because it was the two sanitation guys at the station that were chasing him. But I think as well, and I've only realised this again from talking it through, because you think, well, all these assassins, this high-level assassins that have had this marker, they must all know about this network of homeless people, but actually they don't. So maybe it is just John or High. Do you know what I mean? It does set up kind of levels or levels of knowledge.
So someone would say earlier about the villain. One of the things I liked about this villain was he was in complete contrast to the villain in the first movie, because the villain in the first movie was quite, even though he had loads of guys like at his beck and call, he was quite a physical villain, in that when it came down to it, he was willing to go toe to toe with John.
Yeah, but he did kind of rely on Ruby Rose a lot of the time.
No. I'm talking about the guy from the first film.
Oh, right. What the uncle?
Mobster.
Yeah, and he's more physical generally, like punching his son and
yeah, exactly. He's a more physical threat.
Yeah.
Whereas this guy was just a fucking weasel. Anyone who wears a long coat over their shoulders and doesn't fucking put it on is a fucking you know what I mean? He's there with the rocket launcher at the beginning. I was like, it's just a weasel. So he was in complete contrast to, because I was actually quite sad when the Russian mobster guy got killed, because he seemed a pretty reasonable guy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas this guy was just an arsehole. So when you got to that bit at the end, obviously, John goes to the high table meeting and takes out pretty much everyone. And what I loved about that sequence, in some ways, it was as good as the earlier big sequence when he's coming out, he's going through the catacombs, is, again, there's a tacticalness to it where he's taking guys out, taking their guns because he hasn't got ammo.
Yes.
Or throwing his gun in their face.
Yeah, that bit was fun.
That was brilliant.
But that was the bit where there was a load of guys where he was just hanging on to for ages, and I was like, please forget about it. Oh, okay. Okay. So he obviously takes that Ruby Rose and whatever, but when before we get to that, let's just take a pause and look at actually the bad guys in this film, the actual army of villains. At what point do you say to yourself, do you know what, I'm out? Because there's a bit where you've just got the kind of the weasel. I'll just call him the weasel now. You've just got the weasel, and there's he's got 2-3 guys with him.
Yeah.
And he does that thing they do in all action films. The villain kind of does something with his hand, like he points, like go, go, go. Like, two of you two go. And I'm like, do you know what? If that had been me and Dave, we would have just walked out of a side door and got in a car and drove the fuck away. And had some kind of whole comedy subplot where we get in some crazy hijinks whilst we're getting away from shit. Because at some point you've got to call it and say, he's just killed 60 guys. What difference is the two of us going to make? Because I know how good my skills are, and they ain't that good.
Well, and he's also killed his equivalents. So people that are much higher up the food chain than they are.
It's true. Yeah.
It's like I'm gonna have to get very lucky right now.
Yeah, it's just now. Come on. But I think when he goes back to the hotel, goes back to the Continental, which I like the whole kind of circular nature of the film, where he ends up back at the Continental, and we're reminded of the rules again. With Ian McShane is there, and the guy's there. What I quite liked about it is the fact that the choice of villain worked at that point, because I think had it been the villain in the first movie, I don't think he would have sat in the Continental. I think he would have come out and faced John.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that world is even his world at all. He was just on the fringes.
Yeah, but there's that as well. But regardless, I think he would have faced John on open ground or whatever. But the fact that this guy set himself up as a weasel, the fact that he's just fucking sitting there, duck fat makes all the difference.
Barry's a big fan of this guy. I love it.
Do you know what, right? I've never killed anyone in my life, hand on heart, but when you popped a cap in that guy's head, I'm like, fair play to you, dude. Do you know what I mean? I know all the shit that's going to come down on you now, but I genuinely, the way the film was set up, he had no other options.
It's interesting, though, that I think, because I like the fact that it's Winston, isn't it, Ian McShane's character? Yeah. So because the weasel is trying to do weaseliness, and is like, can you just revoke his membership? Because he's trying to play the system from within, and he's like, well, no, that's not how it works. He hasn't broken the rules or whatever. But then it's like the fact that John did shoot him, I thought was good, as you say, from the point of view that that guy needs to be killed. However, it's like I kept trying to think why he knows what this means, that he's forfeit. He now, the ante was high here. This is like your great ante. This is like everyone, the open contract, the one really close friend he's got, like a father figure, Winston, even he is reluctantly had to turn against him.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is it just because he's got nothing to live for? That will, I guess, be answered in the third film. But it left me with more questions than answers. I thought.
I genuinely think it was you got. I think the thing is, well, when you watch it, he's literally just come out of. He's been on the run that whole film. For most of that film, he's been on the run. People have been trying to kill him. Everyone's trying to kill him. And he's just had this massive, long fight scene. So his adrenaline is as high as it can be. And then he goes into the place and he finds the guy who he was just trying to do the guy a favor. Right? And the guy's and let's not forget that he fucked him over in the first place.
Yeah, true.
And he's sitting there. Duck fat, lording it, right? And the thing is as well, it's not the same as like him and Common sitting and having a drink. This guy is no threat to him whatsoever. No. The only threat that he has is because he's got power. That is not the same.
And actually, Common. It's a very good point. The only reason he's anything at that moment is he's sat in the one place he can't be killed.
Exactly.
So actually, by doing it, it's like, do you know what? Yeah, it's a valid point. He's the one person he'd step over that line for.
Yeah, and I think the film was all about getting you to the point where you can see why he would do that. Because he knows. Another thing as well, he knows that if he left him in there, he's always going to be looking over his shoulder anyway. Always. So I think he's literally just gone, do you know what? Fuck it. The adrenaline's high, and I think what's interesting is when he then goes home and they send a car for him and he goes back, that's when it starts to dawn on him what he's actually done.
Yeah. If he hadn't killed him, then it's like when at the very beginning when he said, no, I won't take the marker, and he blew his house up. So if he just said, even if Santino had said, no, I won't come after you, you can't trust him. He's killed his own sister, then he's turned on John. He turned on John at the start when he tried to blow him up the house anyway. So he had to take him out, as you said, otherwise we'd be constantly looking over his shoulder.
And maybe there's even an element of, because Winston wouldn't revoke him, actually Winston could have been killed. And in a way, he could have been protecting him.
Yeah. Yeah, and the bigger picture as well is that because he'd got the seat at the high table, he effectively was running the New York side of things, which would have meant eventually he would have got control of that hotel anyway.
Which, that's true. And all through the film, the kind of the moral side of John Wick is there saying to everybody, look, whatever you think about this guy running New York is not a good thing for anybody.
Yeah. But now his seat at the high table is empty because his sister and Santino are dead.
Yeah.
So who's going to... There's going to be more stuff to do the high table now.
Barry's just dusting off his CV and getting his LinkedIn profile ready.
Hey, look, I've got a tailored suit and shit. I'm ready.
That Kevlar not wasted.
Ready. Cassian can shadow you, look after you as your ward.
Yeah.
And you got the suit. Yeah.
Good luck for that, man. I tell you. But I like Pete. I was a bit with the ending because I'm that kind of cliffhanger ending that thing. But I loved when they take him to the square, and it's I've been to that place where it is as well in New York. He's talking to Winston, and there's that bit where he says something to him like, you know, I'll give you an hour, and he's like, well, won't you get in trouble? He goes, no, because this is I allow this to happen.
Yeah.
And then he kind of holds up his hand, and everyone just stops.
Oh.
And that's when I was like, not only was that the coolest thing ever, but also I was thinking, dude, you're in so much fucking shit.
And he's beat at this point. Remember, he's gone through so much stuff. He's been shot and stabbed, and he's fought with everybody. He's fallen downstairs. He's, fallen out of cars, and it's just, he's at the worst place. And now everybody is after him. Open season. It's like he can't get any lower. It's just...
And he had no weapons, neither. He was unarmed as well.
Nothing.
And what I quite like about it is there's obviously a kind of almost father-son relationship between the two of them.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to know why or how that's happened, because there's a brilliant scene as well where like Ian McShane's talking to Duck Fat Dude, as I'm going to call him now, Duck Fat Weasel. Duck Fat
Weasel.
Yeah. And he's kind of saying to him, what I'm going to paraphrase London style, but he's saying, well, what the fuck did you expect? Do you know what I mean? You fucked him over. You stabbed the devil in the back.
Yeah.
He's going to come looking for you now. Oh, I've got everyone after him. He's like, yeah, but he almost wanted him to say, did you not watch the first film? Do you know what I mean? How did that work out for the other dude? Do you know what I mean? You know, Jesus.
I watched Lovejoy reruns by accident. I'm so confused.
Yeah.
I like though in this, because I was thinking about this, that when they blew up his house, he didn't kind of dig back into the basement to get his guns out. He went to the bank, remember? And he goes to the normal bank and sees the Jewish guy, and the guy takes him to his safety deposit box and opens it, and in there he's got coins, stash of coins, some money, and some guns. So I reckon for this third film, he's got some other stashes in other places.
All around the world.
Yeah, but the problem is he can't access any of them.
No, he can't, because he's in community. Yeah, he's completely cut off from the whole
Even
system.
his own money, though.
Yeah, his coins won't work. None of it will
work.
If that's all part of the system, he's out of the system completely. So that the stakes couldn't be any higher.
Yeah.
So
and I want
to watch the third one now.
Yeah. but also as well, with that money, with those gold coins, which obviously was so. The bit where he takes out all the guys in the first film, and then they turn up with the cleans, and he gives them all the coins and stuff.
Yeah,
is the fact you realise the amount of coins that he's got.
Yeah.
Again, the question. These two films are all about questions, and I think what you start to realize like, what the fuck did he do to get so many fucking coins in the first place? Because that's the thing you never really understand is how do you get coins? I understand how the people who work for him get coins, but how does he get coins? And how the fuck did he get so many? I'm guessing by killing a shed load of people.
Yeah. I'm guessing every marker was paid in a huge stack of coins.
Yeah.
Although I got the impression that the marker that's not a standard, that's like a one-off type thing.
True.
Not like something, it's a special
That's a blood bond exchange thing.
Because that marker that Winston gave him, he said you might need this down the road, and he gave him a marker. Is that Winston's marker to him, or is that someone else's one? Because that's what I didn't understand. Because he gives him a marker, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Maybe it's to get Cassian to be on his side, and it's the two of them in the third one.
Do you know what? That's a really good suggestion. That's a really good suggestion, actually.
Because we saw the book, and because he made Santino close the marker, because he said, "Look, he did kill your sister. That was the job. He's done it. Anything else, I don't care. Here's the book. Here's the marker. You seal it." And he makes him do it, and you get to see the book and a whole bunch of other people with other names and stuff in there. So I don't know. Has John got someone else's marker that he can call in a favor for? If that's what's left, because if he's the system, he's out the system.
Well, that's all he's got. Yeah.
Did he do a favour for someone, and now he can call it in with a marker? Is that, you know, I don't know how else he's going to survive more than the first 5 minutes and be a very short film.
But that last 5 minutes, where it's probably it's probably the only time in that film, those two, where you actually see him slightly afraid. To begin with, he's kind of walking and limping, and then he's just full on running because he suddenly realizes, like, oh,
everybody,
everyone, every fucker's after me. And I think the fact that his dog's running with him as well is like, you know, you're in trouble, because even the dog's like, we need to get the fuck out of here, dude. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going the same way as last.
I have watched the first film.
I'm not ended up like that other puppy dude. I'm out of here.
Me and the dude from Fringe, we were chilling out. He put it on. We watched it. No, that's not happening to me.
This is not The Incredible Journey.
There's a voice. Wait, that's not Littlest Hobo. What's going on?
Just
I like the fact that he did stash the dog though, and just kind of said, "Look after the dog," and so they don't bring that into the film. Like, we're going to kill your dog again. It's like, no, the guy at the Continental's looking after it. That's it. The dog is fine.
I was worried.
Yeah.
No, so I was quite grateful for that. I couldn't deal with that.
The weasel could have snuck into the hotel, then shot it and said, "Well, it doesn't say anything about not killing animals." And they'd be like,
"Well, that's the sort of thing that if you were a lesser filmmaker, in all seriousness, that's the sort of thing that you could have done, where John has followed him back, and almost like he's not going to do anything, and then he kind of, yeah, that your dog, and kicks him or shoots him or something, and then he takes him out.
That's what I thought on the opening sequence. I thought that was the kind of film we were heading towards, with the uncle killing his dog, and I was thinking, oh, please don't do that to us, but they didn't, which is good.
Yes.
Are we ready with scores then, gentlemen?
Yes.
I believe so.
If it bleeds, we can kill it. Enough with the yakety yak. What is your score?
Guests, do you want to go first?
Damn it. I can't, in good conscience, give it 5 out of 5. I would like to give it 5 out of 5. Just because of the fact that it did what very few sequels do, which is actually expand the world, and not just give me another film, not just give me the same film over again. But I can't. The Laurence Fishburne sequence, just pigeons and
You're taking a bag off a homeless man.
no, and someone get this man a gun. Just so I'm gonna have to go 4. I'm sorry, I've got to take a bag for Lawrence. I've got to do it. Got to do it. So
That's also our new charity. This one.
A bag for Lawrence.
take a bag for Lawrence. Hi, I'm Brad Nugent. You may remember me from Geeks Syndicate. I'm running the charity called Take a Bag for Lawrence.
All the rum tum ticker money goes straight there.
Nice. Right.
I'll
go next, Pete.
okay.
I did enjoy this film. I really did. I was worried, like both of you, that it was going to go in one direction. I was afraid it was going to become too silly. There were some moments that were slightly over the top, even within the scope of this film. But it was still amazing. The action was incredible. I mean, Keanu Reeves is, in his late 50s or something now? Or the guy's like an immortal. He's just incredible. He has aged, but the stuff he can do now. I remember when someone asked Laurence Fishburne, like this is 15 years or more after he'd done the last Matrix film. They said, would you ever do another action film? And he went, no. And he said, why? He goes, because it hurts. And that was then. And I'm like, yeah, but look at Keanu now. There was a time where the two of them were the same weight, and shape and size, and fighting in a dojo. And now, bless him, I love John, Laurence Fishburne, but he did eat all the pies. Whereas Keanu, man, that guy's lean. He's like a reed, and he just brings it in this film so much that he gets a couple of bags just for his action and for everything that he does, and all the training behind the scenes stuff I've been watching, all the things that he puts into it is incredible.
They should bring him in to train the guy from Iron Fist.
They should bring me in to train the guy.
They should bring my mum in to train the guy.
All right. Hang on. So, I liked it. Let me give it a score. I liked it, but reservations. So it's still a very, very good film. So I'm also going to give it 4 bags. Pete.
Yeah.
Okay. The wonders are when there's 3 of us, there's very little left to say. So I won't say very much. Yeah, I agree, really. I was a little bit frustrated that it was like a bridging film. Having said that, from talking about it, I'm desperate to see the 3rd one.
Oh, yes.
Talking about it has made me remember all the good bits, which is good. I think it's very difficult to make a second film when a first film is about somebody's change back to their past. But they did do that by building the world. So, the same for me. I mean, the action, I don't think there are modern films that really, certainly not mainstream films that compare with these two. So, I would give the action a 6 and the plot a kind of 3.5. So I'm also going to give it a 4.
It's still
and I think, Keanu is ridiculously watchable. I read a thing the other day, someone said about how because he can do the martial arts and he can move, that they're saying there's no one else in cinema that can move through the frame the way that he can. And it's crazy because you think back years ago, he was so derided as an actor.
It's true.
Because people said he was wooden and stuff. But he's a brilliant actor because it's not just about what they say. Like he does the first 15, 20 minutes of this film, he barely says a word. And he's breathtaking.
I was just the physicality, which is what we haven't really talked about to a certain extent. The physicality in these two films is just amazing. The way he moves, the way he checks, when he's got the gun and he goes into and he's checking corners and stuff. The way he takes people out, and so many films that all three of us have watched, where you do watch this one guy take on hundreds of people. But genuinely, it's one of the few films where, like, you actually buy it.
Yeah, I buy everything he does in both films from that perspective. And also, it's not like he's a new person or like an action star that's come out of nowhere. This is an actor we've all seen in tens of films over the years, but he's John Wick in both those films.
Yeah,
every minute of the film. I know. Have you read the fan theory that he's Johnny Utah?
No.
Yeah, there's people there's an online thing that he's Johnny Utah, and at the end of Point Break, then kind of that, having left Bodhi go in the sea, this is kind of where he ends up.
That's cool. That's cool.
But I mean, I do think though, in terms of the world, and to sort of touch on this idea of the series that they're trying to do, one of the rumors that I heard is what they were going to do was it wouldn't be John Wick. It would be around the Continental. So
I think that's what the TV show is actually.
It would be the world, and he might pop in as a cameo, but it's more about the world. And certainly watching the second film, I'm like, I could completely buy that if that's what they do. And by cameo, don't have him letting off any gunfire, don't have him doing any action. You have your characters that you have for the Continental, but just have a sequence where like they come in and literally he's kind of walking out and they just go, "You working again, John?" And he just goes, "Yeah." That's it. That is all you would need to like make my head just go. That's it.
It's true.
Done.
It's true. Okay. Right, that's it for the episode. If you want to get in touch with us, the usual things, email us, bagsofaction@gmail.com, come onto the Facebook group. Yes, Pete.
Thank you for listening, if of course you still are.
I'm stealing that. We're stealing that now. Good night.
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 You have been listening to Bags of Action. You'd better stick around for the next episode, because if you're lying, I'll be back.